A dagger of betrayal glinted in the morning light, but its blade wasn't sharp. It was covered in words. "Sign it, or bugger off," my husband sneered, waving papers in the home I paid for entirely. He smiled with a condescending grin, as if forcing me out was a win. I signed, put my keys on the table, and walked away, leaving him with his illusion of victory. The next morning, the sharp cry of his elite lawyer ripped through the air at 7 a.m. "Do you have any idea what you just let her do? We need to talk about the house." Leo's voice sliced through the darkness, and I found him sitting in my office chair, fully dressed, with a briefcase at his feet. He had arranged my own financial documents on the desk, bank statements, mortgage papers, the title deed, as if they were evidence in a court. "I've run a few numbers," he continued, pulling a new legal pad covered in figures. "It's time we discuss who really owns what in this marriage." The briefcase was new, brown leather with combination locks, the kind of accessory worn by blokes who want to look important in meetings they'll never attend. Leo positioned himself behind my desk as if he belonged there. The same desk where I built Almeida and Vasconcelos Consulting from the ground up, turning it into a 7-figure business. The morning light from the window highlighted dust motes floating between us, and I noticed he'd moved my achievement awards to make room for his legal pad. "You went through my files." It wasn't a question. This was the locked cabinet where I kept original documents, multi-million-dollar contracts, and confidential client information that required NDAs just to discuss. "Our files," Leo corrected, tapping his pen on the pad. "Marriage is a partnership, Charlotte. 50-50. That's what my lawyer told me." Those words hung between us as I took in the man I'd married 4 years earlier. Leo wore the charcoal suit I'd bought him last year for a job interview he'd canceled at the last minute, claiming the company wasn't prestigious enough for his vision. His hair was slicked back with the expensive pomade from my bathroom drawer. Even his posture was different, straighter, rehearsed, like he'd been practicing this scene in the mirror. I walked closer, watching how he'd arranged my documents into neat stacks. The mortgage statements showed every payment I'd made before and during our marriage. The property tax records were in my name. The title deed was dated 2 years before we even met, purchased with my grandmother's inheritance, from a woman who worked 3 jobs to save Matt every cent. "Your lawyer," I repeated, picking up the Coastal Industries contract from the corner of my desk where he'd shoved it. That one deal alone had generated more revenue than Leo had earned in his entire life. The same Leo who called lawyers parasites last month when I hired Madeline to review our expansion documents. He shifted in my chair, my custom-made ergonomic chair that cost more than his gym membership. That was different. This is about protecting our interests. Our interests. I put down the contract and picked up his legal pad. His handwriting looked like a child's attempt at cursive, full of swoops and uncertainty. He had scrawled marital assets at the top and listed everything I owned, including things from before our marriage. My grandmother's jewelry. The cabin in the snowy mountains my dad left me. The original paintings I bought to celebrate my first million. Leo stood up, coming around the desk to face me directly. "I contributed to this marriage, Charlotte. While you were building your business, I took care of our home. I supported your career. Took care of our home." I thought of the contractors I hired to fix the leaky roof that Leo never even noticed. The gardening service I paid for because Leo's idea of gardening was hiring neighborhood kids who never showed up. The cleaning service that came twice a week while Leo was at his extended business lunches with his partners who never seemed to have any actual business. "Is that what you told your lawyer?" I asked, spotting a business card for Garrett and Associates peeking out from under the mortgage papers. "That you took care of our home while I worked?" "I made sacrifices," Leo said, his voice rising a little. "I put my career on the back burner for this marriage. The career that never existed. The consulting business that never had clients. The app development company that never developed apps. The investment advisory service that never advised anyone, because Leo didn't have the necessary licenses and showed no interest in getting them. I walked to the window, looking down at the garden I'd designed and paid for, where I'd planted roses from my grandmother's home after she passed. The same home she left me enough money to buy this place, back when Leo was still living in his brother's basement, talking about potential and opportunity while playing video games until dawn. "The house is mine, Leo," I said calmly, watching Mr. Wilson walk his poodle past our driveway. My driveway. "It was mine before we met. The title deed is in my name only. I paid every mortgage payment, every repair, every improvement. We're married," Leo said, as if those two words erased years of financial records. The law says premarital assets remain separate unless they're commingled." I turned to face him. I was very careful not to commingle. Leo's face reddened. He picked up a stack of bank statements, waving them at me. "This shows transfers to the joint account. You put money in our shared account every month for household expenses, groceries, bills, your personal spending. All documented, all separate, from the mortgage and property taxes that I pay from my business account." He slammed the papers down on the desk, his rehearsed pose falling apart. "I deserve something for these 4 years. You can't just what, Leo?" I picked up the title deed, holding it up to the light. "I can't keep what I bought with my inheritance? I can't keep what I paid for every month while you were at the gym, having lunch, at networking events that never led to anything?" Leo grabbed his briefcase, fiddling with the combination locks he'd probably set yesterday. "This isn't over. Tom Garrett is one of the best divorce lawyers in the state. Tom Garrett advertises on bus stop benches," I said, remembering the yellow placards I'd seen in the city. "He's been suspended from the bar twice for ethics violations." Leo's face went pale. "How did you—" "I run a consulting business, Leo. I research. It's what successful businesses require." I took my documents from the desk, arranging them back into their proper order. "Something you'd know if any of your ventures had ever progressed beyond a PowerPoint presentation." He just stood there, the briefcase clutched to his chest like armor, the morning light making him look younger, more like the charming bloke I'd met at that conference 4 years ago, the one who talked about dreams and ambition, who made me believe that partnership meant something more than financial contribution. "We'll see what happens when the papers are filed," Leo said, heading for the door. "You might be surprised at what a good lawyer can do." I sat down in my chair, still warm from his presence, and opened my email. 3 new client inquiries, a contract renewal for the Moran Group, and a message from Madeline marked, "Urgent, read immediately." My lawyer, who really was one of the best in the state, had been waiting for this day for months. "Leo!" I called, just as he reached the door. He turned, a flicker of hope in his features. "The locks are being changed when you get home tonight." The locks wouldn't be changed for another 6 hours, but I had more immediate problems. Emily, my CFO, knocked on my office door 20 minutes after Leo left, carrying the monthly financial statements I usually reviewed myself. Her expression made my stomach sink before she even spoke. "I wasn't sure if I should bring this straight to you," Emily said, placing the folder on my desk with unusual hesitation. She'd been with me for 3 years, hired right out of uni, and had never seemed so uncomfortable. "Leo picked these up from accounting yesterday. Said he was helping with the monthly review." I opened the folder, scanning the credit card statements first. Everything looked normal until the 3rd page. There it was, buried between a lunch and office supplies. Garrett and Associates, $10,000 retainer fee, dated 3 weeks ago. The same day Leo had surprised me with flowers and dinner at my favorite restaurant, claiming he wanted to celebrate my latest contract. "Emily," I said, keeping my voice level despite the rage building in my chest. "Did Leo say anything when he picked these up?" She shifted, uncomfortable. "He mentioned something about getting a better handle on the business. Said he wanted to be more involved in your success. She paused, then added quietly, "He also asked if I knew how corporate assets were handled in a partnership. I assumed he was referring to a business partnership, of course." Leo, who couldn't balance his own checking account, was suddenly developing an interest in corporate asset division. I flipped through more pages, finding 2 additional consultations charged to our joint account. One with a property appraiser, and another with someone named Bernard Smith, whose LinkedIn profile, which I quickly pulled up, revealed him as a business valuator, specializing in private firms. My phone rang at exactly 12:30. Leo's name on the screen was accompanied by a photo from our wedding, both of us smiling at something off camera. I remembered the moment. My cousin was making faces, trying to get us to laugh naturally for the photographer. We looked happy, young, unaware that one of us was capable of this kind of calculated betrayal. "Hey, babe." Leo's voice carried a strange energy, like he was reading from cue cards. "What time are you getting home tonight? I'm planning something special for dinner." Leo didn't cook. In 4 years of marriage, his culinary accomplishments included burnt toast and, occasionally, successfully reheating a takeaway meal. "Something special? We need to talk about our future," he said, and I could hear paper rustling in the background. "About making some changes that'll benefit both of us." The words sounded rehearsed, probably practiced in front of the bathroom mirror this morning after I'd left. I pictured him standing there, gesturing to his reflection, trying different inflections, until he found one that sounded authoritative rather than desperate. "I'll be home at 7, I lied, already mentally reorganizing my schedule. "Should I pick up a bottle of wine?" "No, I've got it sorted." Another new one. Leo sorting out anything beyond his gym schedule was remarkable. "Just bring yourself." After he hung up, I sat in my office feeling the weight of what was coming. The man who needed detailed instructions to operate our coffee machine was orchestrating something he thought was clever. The same person who forgot our anniversary twice was suddenly detail-oriented, enough to hire lawyers and appraisers without my knowledge. My phone rang again. This time, it was my mum, the number from Adelaide, bringing a different kind of dread. Mum never called during business hours, unless something was wrong. "Charlotte, love, I'm a bit confused about something," she began without preamble. "Leo rang this morning asking about your dad's cabin in the mountains. He wanted to know if the title was in your name or if it was still part of the estate." The cabin. 2 acres of untouched bushland that my dad left me when he passed 5 years ago. Leo had been there exactly once, complained about the lack of Wi-Fi all weekend, and swore he'd never go back. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing specific, but he was pushy. Said he was helping you organize the family assets for tax purposes." She paused, and I could hear her uncertainty. "Since when does Leo care about taxes? Last Christmas he didn't even know what a tax return was." "Mom, did he ask about anything else?" "Your grandmother's jewelry, if it had been formally appraised, if there was documentation." Her voice hardened. "Charlotte, that boy turned up to one family gathering in 4 years. Now he's ringing me about title deeds and appraisals." Leo had been at his brother's Bucks party during my dad's funeral. He'd missed my grandmother's 90th birthday because of a networking retreat that turned out to be a weekend of golf. He'd never shown any interest in my family, other than to ask if there were any trust funds he should know about. "Don't tell him anything else, Mom. If he rings again, send him to..." "Me already did. I told him my memory wasn't what it used to be." She gave a dry chuckle. "My memory's fine. I remember exactly what I think of blokes who plot their attacks while pretending to love you." After my mom hung up, I made my own call. Madeline answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and professional, even though I was calling her on her personal number. "Charlotte, I figured you'd be calling. You were expecting this? I've been waiting for it since Leo showed up at the Harrington Charity Gala last month, chatting up divorce lawyers during cocktails. Word gets around in legal circles. I thought about that night. Leo had disappeared for an hour, claiming he was networking. I was too focused on securing a donation for the women's shelter to pay attention to his whereabouts. Madeline's fingers flew over her keyboard as she spoke. Let me pull up your files. The AV Equity Fund, established 2 years before your marriage. The house titled exclusively to the fund. Your business incorporated as a separate entity with you as the sole owner. Your prenuptial assets, all documented and never commingled with marital funds. So I'm protected? Better than protected. You're bulletproof, legally speaking. She paused, and I could hear her smile over the phone. Leo can hire every lawyer from here to Adelaide. The documentation is airtight. Then why do I feel like I'm losing something? Madeline's voice softened slightly. Because you are. You're losing the illusion of who you thought you married. That's often a lot harder than losing money. What do you recommend? Let him play his hand. Document everything. Every conversation. Every financial transaction. Every meeting with his dodgy backyard lawyer. Her tone hardened again, back to business. Blokes like Leo always overplay their hand when they think they're winning. Their ego becomes evidence. I thought of Leo sitting in my office chair this morning, arranging my papers like props in his performance. The new briefcase, the rehearsed posture, the canned lines. He wasn't just planning a divorce. He was staging a takeover. Madeline, he's planning something for tonight. A dinner where we'll discuss our future. Then give him the performance he's expecting. Let him think you're completely clueless. The more confident he feels, the more mistakes he'll make. She paused. And Charlotte? Record everything. New South Wales law allows for one-party consent recording. Your phone in your pocket is perfectly legal. I hung up the phone feeling more steady, but somehow sadder. This morning, Leo was my disappointing husband. This afternoon, he was my opponent. By night, he'd reveal himself as something worse. A man who'd spent years sleeping next to me while he plotted his betrayal, practicing his lines in the mirror, convinced he could take everything I built because he saw me build it. I got home at exactly 7 o'clock, my phone recording in my jacket pocket. Its weight was a small comfort against what was to come. The house smelled strange, like soy sauce and something synthetic. Leo had ordered Chinese takeaway, but not from our usual spot. This was from the cheap joint near the highway, the one we'd tried once and swore never to go back to after finding a hair in the fried rice. He had set the dining room table with my grandmother's Wedgwood china, the delicate blue and white plates she'd brought from England in 1952. We'd used them exactly twice in 4 years, our first anniversary and the night my biggest client signed a 5-year contract extension. Leo had complained both times about having to hand wash them, saying it was pretentious to own plates you couldn't put in the dishwasher. Now he moved around my kitchen with an unfamiliar purpose, dishing out chicken chow mein and beef and broccoli onto china that had survived 2 world wars and 3 generations, only to be used as props in Leo's performance. He'd even lit candles, the expensive ones I saved for power outages, and dimmed the lights for what he probably thought was atmospheric, but actually made the room look like a funeral parlor. Sit down, he said, gesturing to my usual chair while he remained standing, a manila folder tucked under his arm. He'd changed suits, this one a navy blue, also purchased with my credit card during last year's failed job hunt. We need to have an honest conversation about our marriage. I sat, noting how he had positioned himself between me. The door, probably something his backyard lawyer had suggested. Establish dominance. Control the exit. Make her feel cornered. What neither Leo nor his bus stop lawyer understood was that I negotiated with corporate executives who ate intimidation tactics for breakfast. Leo cleared his throat and launched into what was obviously a prepared speech. Charlotte, we've grown apart. Our life paths have diverged in ways neither of us anticipated when we said our vows. He took a dramatic pause, the way he'd seen actors do in films. I've been doing a lot of introspection, seeing a therapist, working on myself. Therapy. That was new. Unless he considered YouTube motivational videos professional help, Leo had never stepped foot in a therapist's office. He continued, his voice taking on the smooth cadence of a bad TED Talk. I've realized our marriage has become unbalanced. You're consumed by your work, and I've been left to manage everything else alone. The emotional labor, the household management, the sacrifice of my own dreams to support yours. I reached for my water glass, letting him continue his monologue while I studied his face. He had practiced this in front of a mirror, probably several times. His gestures were too coordinated, his pauses too calculated. Even the way he'd placed his hands on the back of his chair was staged. I think it's best we go our separate ways, he continued, finally sliding the manila folder across the table, nudging aside a container of sweet and sour sauce. I've prepared some papers that I believe are fair to both parties. I opened the folder while Leo watched, his breathing a little quick. The first page was exactly what I expected, a joke of a legal document that looked like it had been downloaded from a template website and filled out with creative interpretations of property law. He was demanding the house, citing his contributions to its upkeep and maintenance. He wanted alimony based on his career sacrifices. He even listed my business as a marital asset, claiming he had been an unofficial consultant during its development. You want half of Almeida and Vasconcelos, I said, not as a question, but as confirmation of his delusion. I was your sounding board on all the important decisions, Leo said, his confidence growing. I attended networking events. I supported your late nights. I sacrificed my own entrepreneurial ventures. I turned to the next page. He wanted my grandmother's jewelry, calling them gifts to the marriage. The cabin in the snowy mountains was listed as joint recreational property. Even my car, purchased 6 months before we were married, was somehow classified as a shared asset. Leo moved closer, standing over me now. This is what's fair, Charlotte. What we built together should be divided equally. I continued to read in silence, my expression neutral, while inside I was cataloging every ridiculous claim, every legal impossibility, every piece of evidence that Leo had no understanding of what he really signed this morning in my office. The papers he'd so carefully arranged on my desk had been a decoy. Documents I'd left accessible, knowing his curiosity would override his limited attention span. Leo's patience was wearing thin. Well, are you going to sign? I put down the papers and looked at him. You want the house? I deserve the house. I made it a home while you treated it like a hotel. And my business? Our business. Built during our marriage. Community property. The cabin in the snowy mountains? Where we made memories as a couple. Each lie was delivered with increasing confidence, as if repetition could turn fiction into fact. Leo spent exactly 1 night at the cabin in the snowy mountains, complained the entire time, and left early, claiming allergic reactions to pine trees that mysteriously never affected him during the Christmas season. I picked up the pen he'd placed next to the papers, a blue Bic, not even a good one, and he recoiled, anticipating victory. His phone was already in his hand, probably ready to text his brother or his gym mates about his successful negotiation. No, I said simply, dropping the pen. Leo's face so flushed. What do you mean no? I mean no, I'm not signing these papers. His rehearsed pose cracked like cheap paint. You have to sign. It's what's going to happen. I've made my decision. Your decision? I stood up slowly, matching his height in my heels. Your decision about my house, my business, my inheritance? Leo's hands clenched into fists. Our house, our business, 4 years of marriage makes it all ours. That's not how property law works, Leo. He slammed his palm on the table hard enough to make the china rattle. Don't you dare give me a lecture on the law. My lawyer says. Your lawyer who advertises on bus stop benches? Leo's face went from red to purple. He leaned over the table, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was threatening. You're going to sign those papers, Charlotte. You can do this the easy way, or we can do it the hard way. The hard way. I almost smiled. What does that mean exactly? He straightened up, standing at his full height, and pointed at the door. Sign the papers or get out. This is my home now. I've established residency. I've contributed to its upkeep. Sign it or pack your bags and leave. The words hung in the air between us, exactly as Madeline had predicted. Leo had delivered his ultimatum exactly as his budget lawyer had probably coached him, without understanding that he had just committed several legal blunders in under 30 seconds. All now recorded on my phone. I picked up the pen again, and Leo's entire body relaxed, victory etched on his features. I signed each page slowly, deliberately, making him watch every signature. My name flowed across the signature lines with the same precision I used for multi-million-dollar contracts. Every letter perfectly formed. When I finished, I put the pen down and took my house keys from my pocket, placing them next to the signed papers with deliberate ceremony. My wedding ring came next, the platinum band I'd bought myself when Leo claimed rings were old-fashioned symbols of ownership. The irony was not lost on me. I stood, picked up my handbag, and walked toward the door without a word. Leo called after me, his voice carrying a mix of confusion and triumph. That's it. You're just leaving. I paused at the entryway, looking back at him standing there between the takeaway containers and the stolen china, holding papers he didn't understand, celebrating a victory that existed only in his imagination. I said nothing. There was nothing to say that wouldn't be better delivered through legal channels. 20 minutes later, I was in Madeline's conference room, the room usually reserved for depositions and settlement negotiations. She had stayed late, as promised, and had already set up everything we needed. Coffee in real cups, not the paper ones Leo always grabbed from petrol stations. Legal documents spread across the table in organized sections, each properly tabbed and labeled. Did he say it? Madeline asked, pulling up social media on her laptop. Word for word. Sign it or bugger off. He even pointed at the door for emphasis. Madeline's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Perfect. Now, let's review what he's been posting while you were at dinner. Madeline's laptop screen glowed with Leo's latest Instagram post, sent just 45 minutes after I'd left the house. The photo showed him holding up a beer in my living room, surrounded by his gym mates, with the caption, "New chapter starts now. Sometimes you just have to remove toxic people to find your peace." Fresh start. My house. Leveling up, He's literally broadcasting the evidence, Madeline said, taking screenshots with methodical precision. Look at this one. She scrolled to another post where Leo had photographed my office, now transformed into what looked like a gaming paradise. 3 monitors arranged on my handmade desk, LED strips running along the walls I'd painted myself. His collection of action figures displayed where my achievement awards used to be. The caption read, "Finally turning this workspace into something productive. No more corporate prison vibes." My phone buzzed with a message from Lucy, my neighbor from 2 doors down. We weren't close, but we shared the kind of polite relationship that involved waving during morning runs and taking parcels for each other. Her message was brief. "Leo's having a real party. Just saw him giving about 10 blokes a tour. He's telling everyone you abandoned the marriage for your career. Thought you should know." Another message came immediately, this one with a video attachment. Lucy had filmed from her kitchen window, capturing Leo on the balcony with his brother and several blokes I recognized from his gym. His voice carried clearly across the quiet street. She chose spreadsheets over family. I gave her an ultimatum, and she just walked away. Can you believe it? 4 years of me supporting her ambition, and she couldn't even fight for us. I left my phone on the marble counter of the hotel suite bathroom. The Grand Hyatt wasn't cheap, but I needed a base of operations that felt controlled, professional, a place where I could think without the emotional weight of memories in every corner. The suite had a separate living room with a desk where I'd already set up my laptop, preparing for what was to come. Mark Evans' name appeared on my phone screen. My CFO rarely called after hours unless something required immediate attention. The transition is complete, Mark said without preamble. All company accounts have been restructured. Leo's access was terminated at 8:47 p.m. His corporate card has been deactivated, and all automated payments linked to it have been suspended, pending reassignment. How many automated payments? 17, including his BMW lease, gym membership, club access, wine storage unit, and something called Executive Presence Coaching that's been charging $2,000 a month for the last year. Executive Presence Coaching. Leo had told me it was career counseling to help him launch his consulting business. I was funding his life coach to tell him he was special, while he contributed nothing to our home except dirty dishes and empty promises. Document everything, Mark. Create a complete audit trail. Already underway. Also, Leo tried to use the corporate card 20 minutes ago at something called Velocity Sports Bar. The transaction was declined. Of course, he tried to pay for his celebration party with my company card. The same card he'd been using for years to fund his lunches with potential business partners that never materialized into real ventures. My phone rang again. This time showing my sister Emma's face. A photo from last Christmas when she'd visited from Adelaide. Emma was 3 years younger, but decades wiser when it came to reading people. She never liked Leo, though she was polite enough to hide it during family gatherings. What kind of manipulative garbage is Leo trying to pull? Emma's voice was tight with anger. He just rang me, claiming you're having some kind of breakdown, that you've abandoned your marriage and need space to process your emotions. He actually suggested I should encourage you to get therapy for your work addiction. He rang you 20 minutes ago. Had the nerve to sound concerned, like he was the doting husband. Kept going on about how you chose your career over family, that he tried everything to save the marriage, but you were too focused on money to see what really mattered. I walked to the suite window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Leo was celebrating in my house, telling his version of events to anyone who'd listen. The villain narrative he'd created, where I was the cold, calculating career woman who abandoned a loving husband. Emma, he's trying to control the narrative before what? Charlotte, what is actually happening? Because the Leo who rang me sounded coached, like he was reading a script. He used words Leo doesn't know. He mentioned emotional labor and relationship equity. Since when does Leo know those terms? Since his lawyer told him what to say. Emma's silence lasted several seconds. He's trying to get the house, isn't he? The house Grand's money bought. Among other things. That pathetic leech. 4 years of you paying for everything while he played at being a businessman. And now he wants to steal what you built. Her voice rose. Remember when Dad was in hospital? Where was Leo? Oh, that's right. On a crucial networking retreat that ended up being a golf weekend. I remember. 3 months Dad was sick, and Leo visited once. For 20 minutes, and now he's ringing me about family values. She paused, her voice softening. Do you need me to go get anything from the house? Important documents? Grand's jewelry? Anything he could damage or lay claim to? Not yet. Let him think he's won for now. Charlotte, I know you. You're planning something. I'm not planning anything. I'm just documenting reality while Leo creates his own fantasy. After Emma hung up, I opened my laptop and logged into our banking app. The joint account showed Leo's spending in real time, $60 at Velocity Sports Bar, declined. $40 at the bottle shop, declined. $20 at the pizza joint, declined. Each rejection was stamped with the date and time, creating a digital trail of Leo's celebration party falling apart. A message from Emily popped up. Leo rang the office asking for access to the company portal, claimed he needed to review partnership documents. Security flagged it as attempted unauthorized access. Partnership documents. Leo, who had never been a partner in anything except spending my money, was already trying to establish a claim to my business. His lawyer must have told him to gather evidence of involvement, not understanding that every login attempt, every phone call, every text message was being logged by people who actually understood documentation. My phone buzzed with another Instagram notification. Leo had posted a photo of my wine cellar, the one I had custom built to house my collection of investment vintages. He had opened one of my bottles of Grange, valued at around $5,000, and was serving it in plastic cups to his gym mates. The caption, "Life's too short to save things for special occasions. Today is the special occasion." Madeline messaged me immediately. "He's documenting the destruction of separate property assets. Keep recording everything." The silence of the hotel room felt strange after years of Leo's constant noise, his video games, his conference calls for businesses that never launched, his motivational podcasts played at volumes that suggested he thought success could be absorbed through sheer decibels. Here, in this temporary space, I could think clearly for the first time in months. Another message arrived, this one from the BMW dealership. "Mrs. Davies, we're attempting to contact Mr. Wilson regarding the lease payment for the car. The account on file has been declined. Please contact us at your earliest convenience." Leo's first stumble was beginning. Tomorrow, when he woke up hungover in my home, surrounded by empty bottles and the wreckage of his premature victory party, the calls would start. The gym asking about his membership, the club about his access card, the wine storage unit about its monthly fee. Each small failure would snowball into an avalanche of reality that no amount of Instagram filters could hide. I closed my laptop and got ready for bed in sheets that didn't smell of Leo's cologne or carry the weight of shared disappointments. Tomorrow would bring new developments, new evidence, and new blunders as Leo continued to celebrate a victory that existed only in his imagination. The morning arrived with a text message from Emily that made me sit bolt upright in the hotel bed. "Can we meet before the office opens? There's something I should have told you months ago." The timestamp was 5:47 a.m. Emily never texted before 7 unless something was seriously wrong. We met at a quiet coffee shop 3 blocks from my office, the kind of place where business was discussed in whispers and no one looked up from their laptops. Emily was already there, nervously shredding a napkin into tiny pieces, her usual composure completely absent. 3 months ago, during the Pyres Industries conference, she began without preamble. "I saw Leo at the Grand Hyatt downtown. You were giving your keynote, and I'd stepped out to handle that emergency with the Adelaide contract." She paused, forcing herself to meet my gaze. "He was with someone, a woman, 20s, blonde, very fit." 3 months ago, Leo had told me he couldn't attend the conference because of a stomach bug. I gave my presentation to 300 industry leaders, while my husband was at a hotel 6 blocks away. "I convinced myself it was a client meeting," Emily continued. "Leo always talked about his business ventures, so I thought maybe he'd finally found an investor or a partner." She pulled up her phone, scrolling through Instagram with practiced efficiency. Then last week I saw this. The screen showed a woman's profile, Jessica Cooper, personal trainer and fitness influencer. In her recent posts, Jessica was wearing my diamond tennis bracelet, the one Leo claimed had been sent out for cleaning 2 months ago. Another photo showed her with my Cartier watch, a birthday gift that was supposedly lost during our last holiday. My grandmother's pearl necklace adorned her neck in a gym selfie. "These are all your pieces, aren't they?" Emily asked calmly. "I recognize them from company events." The pearls were my grandfather's wedding gift to my grandmother in 1951. Leo had told me they were at the jeweler's to be restructured. The watch had mysteriously gone missing from our dresser. The tennis bracelet had supposedly fallen off during one of Leo's golf outings, and he'd filed a half-hearted insurance claim that I never followed up on because I trusted my husband. Madeline rang while I was still looking at Jessica's Instagram. "My forensic accountant has found something interesting. Leo opened a separate account 4 months ago at a different bank branch, using your home address, but only his name. Almost $200,000 in deposits over 4 months. Cash deposits structured to avoid reporting requirements. Classic concealment tactics." Papers rustled in the background. "The timing corresponds with items going missing from your inventory. Your grandmother's silver tea set, your dad's signed first edition books, several pieces from your storage unit." My dad's books. The complete collection he built over 40 years. Each volume carefully selected and preserved. Leo had said the storage unit had been reorganized for temperature control, that everything was safer in new containers, that I never had time to inspect. "He's been liquidating assets for months," Madeline continued, "building a getaway fund while you paid for everything. The mortgage, bills, car insurance, food, his gym membership. You were funding his lifestyle while he was robbing you to finance his exit." After ending the call, I drove to my house, not to confront Leo, but to speak with Mrs. Chin next door. She answered immediately, as if she'd been waiting for me. Mrs. Chin was 73, sharp as a legal document, and had lived next door since before I bought the place. She never liked Leo, calling him that loud young man whenever his music disrupted her afternoon tea. "I have something to show you," she said, leading me into her dining room, where a laptop was open on her polished mahogany table. "My grandson put in these doorbell cameras after those parcel thefts last year. They record everything." The footage started to play. Date and time. 2 weeks ago, 2:47 p.m. Leo's BMW pulling into our driveway. Leo getting out, coming around to open the passenger door for Jessica. They were laughing, his hand on her back as he guided her to our front door. The casual intimacy of people who'd done this many times before. "There's more," Mrs. Chin said, clicking on another file. "This is from last month. Jessica arriving alone with her own key, my house key, walking in like she owned the place while I was at a client meeting in Adelaide." The timestamp showed she stayed for 3 hours. Another video showed them loading boxes from the house into Leo's car. My boxes, my belongings, my life being stolen piece by piece while I worked 14-hour days to pay for the roof over their heads. "I should have said something sooner," Mrs. Chin apologized, "but I wasn't sure it was my place to interfere in a couple's business." Back at the hotel, Madeline had gathered more information on Tom Garrett, Leo's lawyer. The research painted a picture of stunning incompetence wrapped in flashy marketing. 2 suspensions from the bar for ethics violations, 1 for mishandling client funds, and another for filing frivolous lawsuits. His website promised aggressive representation for men's rights and featured testimonials that Madeline's investigator discovered were fabricated. "He advertises on Facebook and Gumtree," Madeline said, barely disguising her professional disdain. "His success rate is 12%. Most of his cases end unfavorably or are thrown out." Leo found him through a sponsored post that promised David versus Goliath legal victories. The irony was perfect. Leo, convinced of his own genius, had hired a lawyer whose incompetence was documented in public records. He had chosen flash over substance, marketing over merit, the same way he'd approached everything in our marriage. Mark Evans rang with another update on Leo's financial situation. The executive presence coaching had been canceled for non-payment. His wine storage unit was sending default notices. The club had suspended his membership pending payment of outstanding fees. Every domino was falling exactly as predicted, Leo's carefully constructed image crumbling one declined transaction at a time. Jessica had posted another photo that night, wearing my grandmother's emerald ring at a restaurant I recognized as the spot where Leo had proposed 4 years ago. The caption read, "When you know, hashtag new beginnings, hashtag upgraded, hashtag approved." Right. As if my life, my success, my grandmother's jewelry were all just temporary placeholders until Leo could trade up for a younger model. The investigation was revealing more than just financial fraud and adultery. It was exposing the systematic planning of a man who saw our marriage as a business opportunity from day one, staying just long enough to position himself for what he thought was a lucrative exit. Madeline and I arrived at her office at 8 a.m., earlier than usual, because she wanted to review the trust fund documentation one more time before the inevitable phone call began. The morning sun streamed in through her corner office windows, illuminating the stacks of papers that represented 4 years of my marriage reduced to asset lists and legal precedents. At exactly 8:47 a.m., my phone lit up with notifications from the BMW dealership's automated system. Leo's car had been repossessed from my driveway 30 minutes earlier. The tow truck driver had left a notice on the front door explaining that the leaseholder should contact the financial services department immediately. Leo, who rarely woke up before 11, would discover this in a few hours when he stumbled outside, expecting to find his prized status symbol in the garage. Emily forwarded me an email that had bounced back from Leo's business email address, the one I set up for him 2 years ago, which was now a dead account. His phone would be next, as soon as he realized the device in his hand was suddenly just an expensive paperweight without mobile service. At 9:15 a.m., Lucy sent me a photo from her living room window. Leo was in my driveway in his pajamas, staring at the empty space where his BMW should be, holding the repossession notice as if it were written in a foreign language. Even from a distance, I could see his confusion turning to panic as he tried to ring someone, anyone, only to discover his phone had no service. Madeline's paralegal knocked and entered, carrying a fresh cup of coffee and sporting an expression of barely disguised amusement. Mr. Wilson just tried to use the coffee machine in the house. The Smart Plug app shows 5 failed attempts to activate it remotely. He also tried the television, the sound system, and the automated blinds. Everything was disconnected from his access. The smart home system I'd installed last year was all connected to my account, all controlled by my phone. Leo had scoffed at it as unnecessary tech, but he'd certainly enjoyed using voice commands to adjust the temperature and lighting. Now he was trapped in a house that no longer recognized him as an authorized user. At 9:42 a.m., Jessica Cooper updated her Instagram story. She was at brunch with someone new, a bloke whose Rolex was visible in the frame as he poured champagne. The caption read, "When the universe removes toxic people for you, lest upgrading new energy." Leo had been tagged in the post initially, but the tag was removed within minutes. She'd already moved on to her next target. Mark Evans rang with an update on Leo's morning transactions. He tried to buy coffee at his usual spot, declined. Tried to fill up at 3 different petrol stations, all declined. He even tried to use the Apple Pay linked to the corporate account. That was shut down at midnight. Mark paused, and I could hear him typing. He's currently at an ATM, attempting to access the joint account. It's showing a balance of 0 as of this morning's transfer. Leo's entire financial ecosystem had collapsed overnight. Every card, Every account, every automated payment that had sustained his lifestyle for 4 years had been systematically terminated. The man who'd spent the previous night celebrating his victory was discovering that his empire was built on someone else's foundation. At 10:03 a.m., Tom Garrett's name appeared on Madeline's phone screen. She put him on speakerphone, and we could immediately hear the panic in his voice before he even spoke. Papers were rustling frantically in the background, and someone was typing quickly on a keyboard. "Ms. Madeline, I need some clarification on some documentation that's just come to my attention," Garrett began, his voice noticeably higher than during yesterday's confident threats. "The AV Equity Fund you mentioned. My client was under the impression that the property was a marital asset. Your client signed documents acknowledging that the property was owned by the fund," Madeline replied, her tone professionally neutral, while her eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "His signature appears on 7 different pages, stating his understanding of the ownership structure. But he didn't. I mean, there may have been some confusion about the implications of those signatures." "Confusion?" Madeline pulled up the documents on her screen. "Mr. Wilson signed a separation agreement, demanding sole and exclusive rights to a property he knew was owned by my client's fund. That is a fraudulent document, Mr. Garrett. I'm sure someone who advertises themselves as a specialist in property division would recognize the gravity of that." The typing in the background stopped. We could hear Garrett's breathing quicken as he processed the implications. More papers were shuffled, and then a muffled conversation as Garrett apparently covered the phone to speak with someone else in his office. "I need to review this with my client," Garrett said when he returned, his voice tight. "There appears to be a misunderstanding about the nature of the property's ownership." "There is no misunderstanding," Madeline said calmly. "Your client attempted to lay claim to a property he never owned, using documents he created while plotting to commercially exploit it through short-term rentals. We have his social media posts, his rental listings, and his signed acknowledgement that he understood the ownership structure. Would you like me to forward the evidence file?" Another pause, longer this time. Then, Garrett's voice, barely controlled, speaking to someone in his office but clearly audible through the phone. "Get Leo Wilson on the phone immediately." We heard the speakerphone being turned on in Garrett's office, and then Leo's voice, panicked and angry. "Tom, what is happening? My car's gone. My cards don't work. I can't even make a bloody coffee in my own house." "It's not your house," Garrett said flatly. "It was never your house. What are you talking about? I have the separation agreement." She signed it. Garrett's composure finally broke completely. His voice rose to a near shout, forgetting Madeline and I were still on the line. "Do you have any idea what you just let her do? You signed documents claiming ownership of a property held in a trust established before your marriage. You committed fraud, Leo. Document fraud. She didn't give you anything. You gave her evidence to bury you." The silence that followed was absolute. We could hear Leo breathing on the speakerphone, fast and shallow, as reality finally penetrated his delusions. Madeline unmuted our phone. "Mr. Garrett, we are prepared to give your client 72 hours to vacate, provided he does not damage any property or remove items that don't belong to him. After that, we'll proceed with formal eviction and criminal charges of fraud." Garrett's panicked voice still echoed through Madeline's office as we heard Leo in the background yelling something about squatters' rights and residential tenancy laws. The call ended abruptly, with Garrett saying he needed to review case precedents immediately. Madeline closed her laptop with a snap of satisfaction and looked at me across her mahogany desk. "The eviction notice will be served tomorrow morning at 7, she said, pulling up the police portal on her screen. "Detective Constable Moran has already been briefed on the situation. He's handled dozens of these cases where someone claims possession with no legal basis." The next morning, I watched from my hotel room window as the sun painted the city in shades of gold and amber. At precisely 7 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from Lucy, my observant neighbor. She attached a video of Constable Moran walking up my driveway in his uniform, carrying official documents that would formally begin the removal of Leo from my property. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Leo's number appeared on the screen, calling from a landline, since his mobile service had been terminated. I answered on the third ring, keeping my voice neutral and professional. "Charlotte, we need to talk about this situation," Leo began, his voice lacking its usual manufactured confidence. "This has all gotten out of hand. Maybe we should sit down and discuss this like adults." "We did, Leo. You presented me with separation papers demanding my house, my business, and my inherited assets. I signed exactly what you asked me to sign. That was just a negotiation tactic. You know how lawyers are. They always start high." His voice cracked slightly, the desperation beginning to show. "We could resolve this ourselves. Maybe try counseling. Remember how good things were in the beginning." The beginning. When Leo presented himself as an ambitious entrepreneur, temporarily between ventures. A bloke who just needed the right partner to reach his potential. I mistook his confidence for competence, his dreams for plans, his promises for potential. "Leo, the AV Equity Fund was established 2 years before we met. Every mortgage payment came from my business account. You signed documents acknowledging that you understood the ownership structure. There's nothing to resolve." His tone shifted from conciliatory to aggressive in seconds. "You set me up. You knew what you were doing all along. This whole marriage was just a business arrangement to you." "The marriage was real, Leo. Your contribution to it wasn't. For years, you never paid a single household bill, never contributed to the mortgage, never even bought groceries, unless it was with my credit card. I supported you emotionally. I took care of our home. I sacrificed my career." His voice rose to a near shriek, the same rehearsed lines his lawyer had probably given him. "You played video games while I worked 14-hour days. You went to the gym while I was negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts. You had affairs while I was at conferences earning the money you were spending." I kept my voice firm, factual, without emotional inflection. "You didn't sacrifice anything because you never had anything to sacrifice." The silence stretched for several seconds before Leo's voice came back, smaller now, almost pleading. "Where am I supposed to go? I have no money. My car's repossessed. You've destroyed my life. Your brother is coming with a removal truck this afternoon. You have 72 hours to remove your personal belongings. Anything you actually own. Not anything purchased with my money or claimed as mine." Leo's brother, Daniel, arrived at 2 p.m. with a removal truck that looked too big for what Leo actually owned. I watched through Mrs. Chin's security camera as Daniel helped Leo load his belongings. The gaming chair he bought with last year's consulting bonus, which was actually my quarterly dividend. The gym equipment purchased during his fitness influencer phase, financed by my annual bonus. The vision boards he created during his life coach certification, a program I paid for that he never completed. Lucy sent me updates throughout the afternoon. "They're arguing about the television," she messaged. "Leo insists it's his. Daniel just showed him the receipt on your credit card statement." Another message 20 minutes later showed Leo standing in the driveway, gesturing wildly at neighbors who pretended to check their mail or water their already sodden gardens. Mrs. Chin had positioned herself on her veranda with a cup of tea, watching the proceedings with a keen interest. Mr. Wilson walked his poodle past the house 3 times, each lap a little slower than the last. Leo tried to take the exercise bike, arguing he was the only one who used it. Daniel had to physically stop him, pointing out that the credit card statement showed it was bought with my company card. The wine fridge became another point of contention until Daniel pulled up the purchase history on his phone, proving it predated Leo's arrival in my life. By 4 p.m., the truck contained a pathetically small collection of items. Leo's clothes, most of which I'd bought, but wasn't interested in fighting over. His collection of self-help books and business guides, none of which ever translated into real business activity. The awards and certificates from his various online courses, monuments to potential that never materialized into productivity. Madeline rang while they were loading the last boxes. "I have the full forensic accounting report. Do you want to know the total?" "Tell me." Over 4 years, Leo Wilson contributed exactly $0 to household expenses. He spent $1.8 million of your money on what he categorized as business development, networking, and professional advancement. She paused, and I could hear her flipping pages. That includes $250,000 on gym and fitness-related expenses, $400,000 on restaurant bills for meetings with potential partners that never materialized, $150,000 on online courses and certifications he never completed, and $220,000 on trips to conferences where he was supposedly building his network. And the rest? Personal shopping, entertainment, and cash withdrawals that coincide with the dates he was seeing Jessica. Every cent documented, every transaction tracked. If he tries to claim any financial interest in your assets, this report will demonstrate that he was essentially a dependent who contributed nothing while bleeding the couple's resources dry. I thought about all those nights I came home exhausted from client meetings to find Leo on the couch, plotting his next great venture while I paid for his dreams and delusions. $1.8 million in 4 years. That money could have funded a scholarship program, supported a women's shelter, or helped genuinely struggling entrepreneurs launch real businesses. Daniel banged on several other doors as the afternoon wore on, apparently looking for boxes or tape or bubble wrap. Leo stood beside the truck, his shoulders slumped, watching his life get packed into a space smaller than my walk-in robe. The man who tried to steal my house was being evicted, with barely enough to fill a one-bedroom flat. His empire, revealed as nothing more than borrowed luxuries and stolen dreams. The removal truck disappeared around the corner at 5:47 p.m., taking Leo's meager belongings and his delusions with it. I stood in Mrs. Chin's driveway for a moment longer, watching the empty street where my marriage had just been packed into boxes smaller than my quarterly tax payments. Then I walked back into my house with the locksmith I'd scheduled for 6 o'clock sharp. Robbie from Sydney Security Systems had already done work on the property before, installing the smart locks 2 years ago that Leo never learned how to properly program. He worked methodically, replacing every lock, reprogramming every code, his professional silence a comfort after days of legal battles and emotional confrontations. The new deadbolt on the front door clicked into place with a sound that felt like punctuation at the end of a very long sentence. "All done, Mrs. Davies," Robbie said, handing me a set of keys that gleamed under the porch light. "The smart home system's been completely reset. Only your biometrics and your phone will have access now." I walked into my home, truly my home, for the first time in days. The space felt different immediately, as if it had been holding its breath for 4 years and could finally exhale. Leo had always kept the blinds closed, claiming sunlight gave him headaches, when in reality, he just preferred the cave-like atmosphere for his gaming marathons. I went through each room, opening the curtains, raising the blinds, letting the late afternoon light flood spaces that had been wrapped in his manufactured darkness. The living room windows revealed the garden I planted, but rarely enjoyed. Always too tired from work, while Leo complained that the outdoor furniture wasn't comfortable enough for his afternoon naps. The kitchen felt bigger somehow without his protein powder containers, cluttering every surface. His collection of energy drinks that left marks on my grandmother's wooden table. I opened the windows that had been closed since winter, letting the fresh air replace the mix of his cologne and whatever supplement he was taking for his latest fitness transformation. The Limp Express cleaning crew arrived the next morning for a deep clean. Not because the house was dirty in the conventional sense, but because I needed every trace of Leo's presence professionally erased. They worked their way through each room with industrial-grade equipment, steam cleaning the carpets where he spilled his sports drinks, sanitizing the bathrooms where he left his expensive skincare products that never made him look younger, just more desperate. "We'll need to pay special attention to the master bedroom," I told the team leader, a middle-aged woman named Trish, who understood without further explanation. She'd probably seen enough divorce cleans to recognize the particular type of sanitization that had nothing to do with germs and everything to do with reclaiming a space from someone who had contaminated it with betrayal. While they worked, I drove to the storage unit where I'd kept my dad's books and my grandmother's china that Leo had deemed too cluttered for our minimalist aesthetic. His term for empty space was too lazy to decorate. Box by box, I brought back the pieces of my life I'd hidden to make room for his ego. The collected works of Patrick White that Leo called depressing. The Victorian writing desk where my grandmother wrote her letters, which Leo said ruined the modern flow of the living room. The transformation of my office took 3 days. Where Leo's vision boards had covered the walls, I hung back up my achievement awards. The Partner of the Year plaque from Pires Industries. The Excellence in Innovation certificate from the State Business Council. The first dollar of Almeida and Vasconcelos Consulting, earned not from dreams, but from the hard work that Leo never understood. His garage gym equipment had already been removed, leaving a vast empty space that echoed with possibility. In a week, contractors turned it into the library I'd always wanted. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with the collection Leo scoffed at as pretentious. Hardback editions he called a waste. First editions he'd tried to sell behind my back. A reading armchair positioned perfectly to catch the morning light. The room smelled of wood polish and old paper, not rubber mats and his perpetual stench of gym socks. My sister Emma flew in from Adelaide to help with the finishing touches, bringing a bottle of champagne she'd been saving since our dad passed away. "For when you finally came to your senses," she said, popping the cork in my newly reclaimed kitchen. We drank from my grandmother's crystal glasses, the same ones Leo wanted to sell because nobody uses crystal anymore. The truth about Leo's eviction spread through professional networks without me saying a word. Emily mentioned that Pires Industries was asking about the sudden change in my emergency contact information. Lucy's husband worked at the same golf club where Leo spent countless afternoons networking, and the news spread quickly about the revocation of his membership. Even the owner of Leo's favorite restaurant got in touch, carefully asking if the corporate account was still active for client dinners. It was, just not with Leo's authorization. Jessica Cooper posted a cryptic story on Instagram about learning to spot red flags, and when someone can't even pay for a coffee. She blocked Leo publicly, making sure Mutual Connections saw her disdain for him. His carefully cultivated image as a successful businessman crumbled faster than his legal case. LinkedIn showed he'd viewed my profile 17 times in 1 week, but his own profile disappeared after his post about new chapters and new opportunities was screen-grabbed and shared in private group chats with crying and laughing emojis. 6 months later, on a warm September evening, I hosted my first dinner party since reclaiming my home. Madeline arrived early with her wife, bringing a wine that cost more than Leo's gym membership. Emily came with her husband, carrying a homemade lasagna on the platter that Leo had banished from our kitchen because carbohydrates didn't align with his fitness goals. Mrs. Chin brought her famous spring rolls, the same ones Leo had called too ethnic for my palate. We gathered around my dining table, the same one Leo wanted to replace with something More modern, less meaningful. Candlelight reflected in my grandmother's china. The plates he'd used as props for his final performance now serving their real purpose, to bring people together. The conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by genuine laughter, not the forced networking chuckles that Leo had practiced in the mirror. Madeline raised her glass as we finished dessert, a chocolate souffle I made myself in my reclaimed kitchen. To Charlotte, she said, who proved that the best revenge isn't destroying someone who harmed you. It's simply protecting what was always yours and letting them self-destruct. The toast echoed through my home, my real home, where every room now held my choices, my memories, my future. Leo wanted to steal everything with empty papers and rehearsed speeches. Instead, he learned what happens when performance meets preparation, when pretension collides with patience, when someone who thinks they're taking everything discovers they never had anything to take. If this story of calculated revenge had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button right now. My favorite part was when Leo's lawyer yelled, "Do you have any idea what you just let her do?" after realizing his client had signed everything away for a house he never owned. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.